Hello and welcome back to the channel for the first video of 2025. I hope everyone had a good holiday break and New Year's and all of that good stuff. We are back today for an episode of The One Report, the first episode of 2025. Like I said, I decided not to do one last week. I didn't really feel like there was tons of news to talk about anyway, and I was pretty under the weather last Monday. I still am a little bit, which if you live in the UK, then I'm sure you probably have also been ill over the holiday break. It just happens to everybody, it seems. So still battling through that a little bit, but we have returned to a little bit of normalcy. Not that that has been the case. In terms of one championship news, there's been some big stuff that we're going to chat about, but there's also, it's been a little bit of a strange schedule, I suppose, as of late for me. I don't know. There might be some changes happening with this channel in the coming weeks, but I will let you know as and when that is going to be happening and taking place. So I believe that next Monday we will be back for another episode of the One Report to recap all of the action from One Fight Night 27. And then I'm just looking at my calendar right now. Yeah, that'll be next week's episode. And the week after that, we'll be previewing 170. And I believe that will all still be going ahead. So if you are new to this channel, drop me a subscribe. We are getting close to that 1,000 subscribers mark that I would love to hit sometime soon. But there is plenty of stuff to get into on this episode. It won't be a particularly long episode. Like I said, I'm still feeling pretty under the weather. So we might, we're not going to spend as long on certain things as we might do on other weeks. But still thought it was important to get an episode out, and we are going to start with probably the biggest piece of news that this did come out like a week ago, but I haven't covered this yet. I was going to make a separate video on this, but again, haven't been feeling too well, so it would have just been me sniffing and sneezing for 10 minutes whilst trying to get my words out, but we're a little bit better, so let's talk about it now. And that is the news that 170 has undergone some pretty big changes. We, of course, originally, the co-main event for this card was probably my most anticipated fight that has been booked from One Championship thus far. Maybe Rodtang and Takeru, but that's going to be a really fun fight in terms of a fight that, we've been waiting to see a long time, that is super high level. It was the co-main event of this card, which was Superlek defending the Bantamweight Muay Thai World Championship against Nico Carrillo. That fight is no longer happening due to an injury to Superlek. We also had announced for this card that Nabil Anan will be taking on Cameron Nabati in basically a title eliminator with, I would imagine, the winner of that fight would have gone on to face the winner of Superlek and Nico. Well, with Superlek out, we now have a new look co-main event. Let me switch myself over to this side. It will be Nico Carrillo staying on the card versus Nabil Anan, who is no longer fighting Cameron Nabati for the interim Bantamweight Muay Thai World Championship. I know that Nabati has been pretty outspoken about this not being fair on social media. I think that it seemed obvious when Superlek withdrew that we would get Nico. I thought maybe, if Superlek's not going to be injured for too long, they might just postpone that fight. But I like the idea of keeping Nico on this card, although it would be pretty tough on him if he ends up losing this fight, because he deserves a shot at Superlek, and he's putting that on the line here against Nabil in a fight that I think is maybe outside of Nico versus Superlek the most exciting fight in this division. Nico versus Nabil, two guys that have really come into their own in the last year or so during their time in One Championship. Obviously, Nabil debuted and lost to Superlek, so I think there's an interesting narrative there. Whilst I know that I did see some people on social media being a bit like, I don't want to see Nabil versus Superlek again just yet. And I understand that, but I also think Nabil has been so impressive since that loss to Superlek on his debut that he probably does deserve another shot at Superlek to see how he does. And Nico, he's stopped every opponent that he's fought in One Championship. He's got big wins over the likes of Nongo and Simon Pet Fairtex. So I think he is obviously incredibly deserving and is the rightful number one contender. I can understand Nabati's frustration, but I think Nabil was the right call here. I can understand, again, why he's frustrated, because that's a title eliminator between him and Nabil. I would like to see him booked again soon, maybe on that Qatar card. I think would make a lot of sense. Put him in against another top guy from this division. I know that Felipe Lobo has been teasing some fight news. That makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah, I really, really like this fight. I'm really excited to see this. You know, if Nico had gone out there and beaten Supalek and Nabil had beaten Nabati, I would have been so excited for this fight. It's one of the most exciting striking matchups that one could put together. And so from that standpoint, one have done a great job of keeping, you know, stakes on this card, keeping replacing the fight I was the most excited for probably the next. You know, this fight is still probably the one I'm most excited for. Obviously, I'm excited to watch Tao and Chai and Superbon and the return of Fabricio Andrade, and there's a lot of good fights on this card. But yeah, I think Nico versus Nabil is probably the one that I'm looking forward to the most. And so, in terms of a replacement, I think one did a great job there, although they did kind of have to upset Nabati in the process. But like I said, I think if he gets a top matchup against somebody else, hopefully soon, then hopefully that will help to kind of rebuild that bridge a little bit and you know, give him something so that he doesn't just feel shortchanged out of this whole thing. And you know, you could probably have that be a title eliminator as well for the winner of the title unification between the winner of this interim title fight and Superlight when that eventually does happen, which I believe they've said is going to be in Japan, which is again a really good move from One Championship to guarantee that you are going to get another big fight in Japan, whether it's Nico versus Superlek or Nabil versus Superlek 2. I think that, you know, that's going to be another really, really exciting one to get people, you know, tuning in for 1172, and of course that huge Saitama Super Arena crowd. You know, you should be able to you want to add a lot of big fights to that card. It's a really, really big card for One Championship. I've just seen that my internet has gone a bit shaky, so I hope that the recording doesn't suffer too much. Maybe. Okay, it seems to be picking up. It does that occasionally, you know, it just dips. So it seems fine now. So yeah, like I said, we haven't covered that yet. So I think great fight. A little bit. I understand about his frustration, but I think this was the move that was a bit of a no-brainer for One Championship, and especially with the winner going on to fight Super Like in Japan, I think that makes total sense. Let's get to some other big fight announcements before we talk about this weekend's card. We will talk about One Fight Night 28, which has got a couple of matchups announced. I don't know if this has been updated on the One Championship website, so we're about to find out. It has indeed. We've got 3 fights announced for One Fight Night 28. I am just covering Prashanchai there, who is the main man on this card. He will be defending his strawweight Muay Thai World Championship against England's Ellis Barboza, which is a fight I did not see coming, to be honest. No, that's no disrespect to Ellis. I think that he was definitely in the mix for this following his split decision win over Alif at One Fight Night 23. But I thought, honestly, he would probably need one more win because of the other contenders that are in this division, namely Jonathan DeBella, who put on a phenomenal performance against Rui Batalio at One Fight Night 26, and Sam A, who put on a great performance against was it Akram Hamidi that he knocked out, and then another great performance against Zhang Peimian at 1169. I thought that would be the fight. I thought that we would get Sam A versus Prajanchai yet again, but they've gone in a different direction. I have seen that both JDB and Sam A have kind of been hinting on social media that they've got fights booked. So I think that it makes a lot of sense to see those guys paired up with each other. That could almost be a main event. You know, I think that One Championship are probably not going to do it as a main event because it's not going to be for an interim title or anything like that. But I think that you could do that as a fight night main event. I would love to see that over 5 rounds. And it would be a great fight. So I would love to see that. If that is the next direction, then I can kind of understand them going with somebody else for Prajanchai just to give him a new face to take on for a change rather than just the cycle of JDB and Sam A. And you have those guys fight each other, and because they've both lost to Prajanchai in the past, you have the winner of that fight go on to fight Prajanchai, you know, to prove themselves a little bit more, that one extra step just because they've lost to Prajanchai in the past. I think that does make sense. So if that is the fight that we get, I think this booking makes more sense as a result. That's not the right one. There you go. So yeah, good main event. February, it'll be February 7th for me. Well, it'll actually be February 8th for me because it'll be in the early hours of Saturday morning in the UK. But yeah, good to see Prajanchai back. It feels like it's been quite some time now since that DeBella fight where he won the title. And yeah, I'm happy for Ellis Barboza to get this shot. Like I said, it's a new opponent for Prajanchai. And a very, very good opportunity for Ellis to go out there and really, I know that he's, obviously he had that win over Elif and stuff, but this is an opportunity to really make a name for himself in this fight. I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Prajanchai is very, very, very good. We also have announced for this card a top matchup in the strawweight MMA division between Lito Adiwang and Kato Yamakita. I'm surprised that this fight isn't in Japan, just based on the fact that you would assume that with one championship going to the Saitama Super Arena in March, that they would want as many Japanese talents as they have on that card. Kato Yamakita being one of the top examples of Japanese fighters who are doing well in one championship. He has got 3 wins in the strawweight division. He did suffer a loss to Bokang Masanyane, who has been a top contender in this division for a long time, so that's not too surprising. He has beaten Alex Silva, Jeremy Miyado, and Yosuke Saruta. The Saruta win was not amazing, but, split decision nonetheless. And the finish over Jeremy Miyado at 1166 in Qatar, I thought was very, very impressive. First round submission win for him. I know that Miyado has been on a little bit of a slope. Did he bounce back with a win? No, he lost to Minowa, didn't he? Split decision, yeah. So, not on the greatest run or anything, but I thought Yamakita put on a good performance nonetheless. And Lito Adiwang has been on a good run since he returned from injury. He, of course, got those pretty quick consecutive wins over Adrian Mateus in his return, and then a rematch with Jeremy Miyado, which he won via unanimous decision in November of 2023. And then his one and only fight of 2024 was a pretty entertaining clash with Daniel Williams at One Fight Night 19 in February, where I thought he looked pretty good. Big test, I think, for both men. Lito's got some serious momentum behind him, and I think Kato has fought some good opposition and has looked impressive. So I'm excited to see how this one plays out, and I think that reasonably you could expect the winner of this fight to probably go on and challenge the winner of the strawweight unification title fight that we have coming up, Joshua Pasio versus Jared Brooks 3 at 171 in Qatar in February. You also have Mansur Malachiev in the mix. I don't know if it's Malakiev. I've heard people say it both ways. I always just assumed it was Malachiev, but could be wrong. Mansur, I think is also in that mix. So maybe you have the winner of this go on and fight Mansur. But I think, we'll see how it plays out. But I think that the winner of this is definitely in that mix for a title shot. And we also have the return of Jeremy Pakatu. I never know how to say his name. I really should listen to somebody say it on commentary before I attempt it. So apologies on that. But, coming off of a couple of good wins, he did make one appearance in 2024 where he submitted China's Wang Shou. Could be butchered again, so this just happens when you tune into a one championship video, so I apologize if that is the case. He'll be taking on Russia's Ibrahim Duev. He also fought once in 2024 with a unanimous decision win over Mark Abalado, so interesting to see how he is able to push on in this bantamweight division. Good fights. I don't know what I was going to say there, but I like them. I like these fights. It's not blowing me away, but I think it's looking like a solid fight night card thus far. And of course, we will get many, many more additions. But let's talk about the fight night card that is on our doorstep. It is One Fight Night 27. It will be taking place this Friday, January 10th at Lumpinee Stadium. We have spoken a little bit about this card already because I did a video in reaction to the 2 title fights that will be topping this card. You can check that video out if you want some kind of more in-depth thoughts on those 2 fights. But of course, we will talk about them in just a second. I think this is a really strong fight night card to kick off the year. One Fight Night 26 at the end of last year, I think, was one of the best fight night cards that we have had, period, maybe since the early days of the fight night cards, before we started to get the numbered ones back, like your 1/170s and stuff, when we were getting, the first few Prime Video cards, they were some really, really big events with big title fights and big names and all of that good stuff. And then they kind of started to bring back the numbered cards, so we tend to get those kind of scale fights on those ones now. But in terms of a routine trip to Lumpinee Stadium, I think this is one of the better ones that we have had in quite some time. And my excitement, I think there's a lot of good stuff on this card actually, but my excitement, as you will know if you did check out that video where I spoke about these fights being announced, it is the main event for me. It is the featherweight MMA World Championship clash between the champion Tang Kai and the challenger Akbar Abdullayev. I think that if you were going to make a list of the top 5 MMA fighters in one championship right now, I think that both of these guys would be in for a shout of making that list. Maybe the likes of Fabricio Andrade could be in that mix. Christian Lee also in that mix. Maybe even Stamp Fairtex. Off the top of my head, who else would be in that mix? I guess Malakin, maybe. I know he's coming off a loss. You'd have to put Rug in there, I suppose, wouldn't you? Nobody else has defeated Butcher Ketchup, so he has to make that. But nonetheless, I digress. Jared Brooks, maybe as well. Anyway, both these guys, I think, would be in for a shout. I think that both of these guys are very, very impressive mixed martial artists. Tang Kai has put on a pretty ridiculous winning streak in one championship, back-to-back wins over Tan Lee as of late to win the title and then defend it in Qatar last year. Very patient, a lot of power in his hands, a very good finisher, and the same can be said for his opponent, Akbar Abdullayev, who is probably my favorite guy to watch compete in MMA in one championship at the moment. Fabricio also up there, Christian Lee also up there, Roberto Soldic, a couple of other names, but Akbar Abdullayev, I think, is a guy that every mixed martial arts fan should be tuning in for, not just... I think I would probably say the same about Tang Kai, so that's why I love this fight so much, but Abdullayev, undefeated, every single win has come by way of finish. His knockout over Halil Amir last year was one of my highlights of the year from one championship. Absolutely devastating finish over an opponent that I really rate in Halil Amir. This fight is really, really interesting to me. You have a really well-rounded champion in Tang Kai who is very effective at sticking to a game plan, fights very smart. And in Abdullayev, you have a guy who doesn't usually need to fight super smart because he just gets the finishes every time. But we did see in the Halil Amir fight that he isn't just a guy who blasts through opponents in 1 minute like we had seen from him in the past. The Halil Amir fight pushed him a little bit more, and he was a bit more patient and a bit more calculated. And so I was really impressed by that performance. I think it showed that he is, like I said, far more than just a guy who is dangerous for the first round. And we will see how that translates against, this is the reason this matchup is so good is you have Abdullayev taking on his best opponent to date, and you have Tang Kai, the champion, taking on his most dangerous opponent to date. And I just love this MMA fight. I think it is so good. And like I said, both of these guys, I think, are two guys that you could recommend to any MMA fan. I think any MMA fan should be excited about this matchup. I think it's really, really good. I don't know how I feel about the co-main event, which sees Denise Zamboanga and Aliona Rasahina face off for the interim atomweight title. Long overdue for Denise, who, of course, was supposed to challenge Stamp Fairtex for the atomweight title at 1167. Injury to Stamp happened. That fight fell off. Denise was supposed to fight for the interim title. She got injured. That fight fell off. And now we have it booked again. I've spoken about this fight multiple times because it's been booked in the past. And of course, I did the video reacting to it being announced. I think that there are contenders in this atomweight division that are more worthy of an interim title shot than Aliona Rasahina. And for that reason, this fight doesn't get me too excited, to be honest. But good to see progression in this atomweight division because I don't want this division to just stay, stagnant while Stamp is out injured, but at the same time, I just think there were better picks out there for who could, be in this fight. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. I don't know what this mark is there, by the way, because there's nothing there. I don't know, weird. We also have the return of one of my favorite fighters to watch in one championship. That is Luke the Chef Lisi, who will be taking on Cody Jerome. We have the return of Rambo Lek, who will be taking on Iran's Param Gerati. Could have butchered that. We'll move on swiftly. We have Tommy Langaka versus Dante Leon in a pretty good submission grappling matchup. This makes a lot of sense for both of these guys, and yeah, it's not going to be the people's main event or anything like that, but in terms of one's submission grappling divisions actually feeling like there is stakes outside of the title fight, this is one of the best ones that one have put together since the submission grappling divisions have been launched, because it's actually a fight that has stakes and a fight that has clear progression for both men, and so I like the sound of that quite a lot. We have maybe the most fan-friendly fight in existence between Kulab Dam and John Lineker in bantamweight Muay Thai. John Lineker has put together a really, really fun run in Muay Thai towards the end of last year with knockout wins over Alexei Balako and Asa Tempao, and he will now look to pick up a big win over Kulab Dam, who might not be, the best guy in this division, but he has fought a lot of the top guys in this division. He is used to competing in high-level contests, and so now we will really get to see what John Lineker is made of. We have a pretty important strawweight MMA contest here between Tatsumitsu Wada and Sanzar Zakharov. That I think is a really, really good matchup. Sakharov is clearly a guy that one are pretty high on. He's put together a pretty good win streak in one championship. And for Tatsumitsu Wada, he has fought, a veteran of this division. He's fought some of the top names: Reese McLaren, Gustavo Ballart, Demetrius Johnson, Kyra Akhmatov. So this will be a good test for him. And another really important strawweight matchup. We already spoke about Lito versus Kaito Yamakita. This factors into this strawweight title picture as well, I think. You have Aaron Kanate versus the returning Timofey Nasty Yukin. That is a very fun fight indeed. Kanate has lost both of his fights in one championship, but losses to Abdulayev, who is the number one contender, and Shamil Gasanov, who is probably the next in line for a title shot if he beats Martin Nguyen when they fight in Qatar. You also have the return of one of the biggest kind of breakout MMA stars for one championship in recent times, even though I guess this kind of feels like a people's push, to use a pro wrestling term. It doesn't really feel like one have particularly got behind Chihiro Sawada as of yet, but her results and her performances have been undeniable. She has built together a 3-fight win streak in one championship thus far, wins over the likes of Noel Grandjean and Rajuan. She will be taking on China's Meng Bo here, who is coming off of a loss to Ayaka Miura, but before that, back-to-back wins. And Miura, another one of the very top contenders in this atomweight division, who I think probably would have made a lot more sense to face Denise Samboanga, honestly. But so would Chihiro Sawada. I've made that argument plenty of times already, that if this co-main event was Denise Zamboanga versus Chihiro Sawada, I would be very excited for this card, and it would be two of the better MMA title fights that we have had from one championship in quite some time, I think. But that is not the case. We also, opening the card, is Sua Black, who will be taking on Dmitry Kovtun, which I'm sure will be a fun fight to open the card. And I am never going to be mad at a opening bout of Muay Thai to get us underway, followed by 3 MMA fights, which, as much as I am an MMA fan at, my core, might take the pace down a little bit, but we'll see. Then you get Kulab Dam versus John Lineker. That will be a lot of fun. That will be explosive, I'm sure. And then, you can take a little minute to chill and watch some submission grappling before we go back into 2 Muay Thai fights that should be very exciting whilst they last. And then finally, 2 MMA fights to top the bill. The main event is one of the best MMA fights that one championship could possibly put together. I spoke about how both of these guys could be in a top 5 for the best MMA fighters in one championship right now. This is the top 3 MMA fight that one championship could possibly put together right now. In fact, I think based on the current form of both men, it is probably number 1. That's how good I think this main event is. I'm stoked for this card. I hope you are too. Thank you for being back with me on this channel for the One Report in 2025. Like I said, this channel might be going through some changes in the next few weeks due to some changes that may or may not be happening in my career. You know, as much as I enjoy doing this YouTube stuff, it is very much a side project that I do for the fun of it. When I have the time to do it, alongside all of my other journalism work that I do. And that might be going through some pretty significant changes in the next few weeks. I'm not too sure yet, but I will find out very, very soon. You know, at the very least, we will be back hopefully next Monday to talk about this card. We will hopefully be back to talk about 170, and I will let you know as and when I know what is going to be happening with this channel in the coming weeks. I appreciate your support as always. Thank you for checking out this video. I hope everyone's 2025 is off to a strong start, and I look forward to talking all about these fights next week. So join me then for the One Report. But until then, enjoy the fights, enjoy your weekend. Peace.